protect this land. For the future, we're hand in hand.
Warning. The following program may contain traces of irony, sarcasm, satire, parody, mockery, banter, caricature, and nuts. The opinions expressed are almost certainly not shared by self-appointed officious dictatorial wowsers. If you are dangerously irony deficient or allergic to mockery of the self-important and corrupt, then get a life.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for another episode of the Environmental as Anything podcast. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Sean O'Shaughnessy.
To Sandy Greenwood, who is a Gumbaynggirr woman, a custodian of that precious country down on the mid-North Coast, where there has been so much effort and time put into protecting their sacred sites and their the ecological integrity of their forests down there, and with some success recently with the court cases which have managed to protect those areas that temporarily. Anyway, we want to talk to Sandy about what has been going on there in Gumbaynggirr country and what she hopes to see happen in the future. I'll also be talking to Dailan Pugh about that. He's obviously one of our local experts on issues to do with forests, and he's been speaking out on the decision to protect the koala hubs there in the Great Koala National Park, and so I'll get Dailan on the phone to talk us through some of those issues as well.
And then to wrap up this jam-packed forest-related episode, I'm going to be speaking to Fiona York from GECO, the Gumbaynggirr Environment Centre, who are celebrating their 30th anniversary and an end to native forest logging in Victoria.
To say that our anticipated guest is with us. Sandy Greenwood is a Gumbaynggirr woman and a custodian for her country, and has been one of the staunch part of that staunch community of resistance to the destruction of the forests of the mid-North Coast for a long time now. And she's joining Environmental as Anything today to share with us the story of that resistance and give us an update on how it's going. So, Sandy, thank you for joining Environmental as Anything today.
Oh, thank you, Sean. Again, thanks for having me on your show.
No, we really, it's great to have voices from as far away as you are that are still close to our hearts. That country is very close to my heart, having been a resident of the Kalang Valley for some time, some years ago. But it's one of the most beautiful and precious places. And of course, it's important to all Australians as the proposed Great Koala National Park. So I understand there's been quite a struggle over the last year or more to protect Newry Forest and also the headwaters of the Kalang. Can you tell us a bit about what's been going on there with the Gumbaynggirr people and their resistance to this logging?
Yeah, sure. So there's been as you said, a collective staunch resistance between Gumbaynggirr mob and allies. Activists living in the area have come together. It's a beautiful alliance, working together to protect our sacred homeland. Newry State Forest was subject to be logged in 2021, and the community came together and we blockaded in the Newry State Forest and formed a protest camp, and for 9 months, which was an incredible amount of time and commitment and energy. And we managed to kind of ward them off, the forest, the loggers. And then we had some time away focusing on other things, and then we got the call that Newry State Forest was about to be logged in two months ago in a different compartment of the forest. And again, we formed another protest camp. We just packed up that camp. We were there for 7 weeks. We lit the sacred fire. We had an incredible community of people come together And it was. We had some ups and downs. Obviously, we did witness many trucks come in and desecrate the forest, our cultural heritage, our animal kin. And we had some, incredible warriors walking onto machinery. We had our elders, strong and resistant. And in the end, we won. We got them out. And we took them to court, and we stopped the logging. So it's only a temporary reprieve until we have our hearing in November. But it does give us hope that the power of the people, the power of, litigation, and the power of, allies working with mob, like our collective resources and our talents and our energy combined is a force to be reckoned with. So now we've gone up to the Kalang. We've set up camp in the beautiful Kalang, and we're going to keep protesting and fighting to protect our sacred homeland.
Yeah. I'd like to, inquire, if I may, about, the particular significance of this. Obviously, the cultural significance is very deep, and there may be issues that you can't discuss with me. But whatever you can share with us about that, the cultural significance to the Gumbaynggirr people of those forests.
Sure. So, even into Gumbaynggirr country is there. It's rainforests and waterfalls and mountains, and it's a beautiful country, and all of the country in the forest, all have a deep cultural landscape that signify our burning stories, our song lines, our very essence and identities from Gumbaynggirr people. And as Gumbaynggirr custodians, we have an inherent responsibility to protect country, like our ancestors have done for since the time, since creation time. The New State Forest in particular is sacred men's area. It was traditionally a men's initiation area where men would go to initiation. It's also home of the golden kangaroo, the Numu. There's a beautiful mountain where the men would travel up the mountain as a part of their initiation.
Sandy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I really would I want to hear what you've got to say, but the trouble is we're having trouble with your audio. Is there anything that you can do at your end to help with the quality of your signal? Because I know it's a mobile phone and it can be quite difficult.
I'm so sorry. Sorry, audience. Can you hear me a bit better now?
That's a bit better. Thanks very much. Sorry to interrupt you because we do want to hear what you've got to say.
I'm in the rainforest. Yeah, so you can hear me better now. Newry State Forest in particular is culturally a traditional men's initiation area. Mm-hmm. So Gumbaynggirr men would go there as a part of their initiation to go from boys to men. It's also, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah, it's good now.
Yeah,
thanks.
And it was also home of the golden kangaroo, the golden nungu. We call kangaroo the nungu, and then we got the mountain, the golden kangaroo mountain in the Newry State Forest. So that area particularly is very, very significant to Gumbaynggirr men. Mm. And also in that forest, we have the microbat. And the microbat is the Gumbaynggirr men's totem.
Ah.
So, I mean, and that's just the main kind of, in terms of ceremony, where men would go. Mm. But, we've got our koala dreaming stories, and that forest is full of koalas. Mm. We've got our dreaming tracks and our song lines that go through all that forest that connect up with all the other forests on Gumbaynggirr country. So, I mean, there's cultural heritage all over Gumbaynggirr country, just like any other nation's land would, signify our cultural dreaming stories.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a non-Gumbaynggirr person who works for Forestry Corporation signed off on the cultural heritage survey and said there was no cultural heritage in the forest. So that's kind of caused the problem where we're at today, while we had to defend country, because it's teeming with cultural heritage.
Mm. Yeah, that's a shocking story, really, that they dismiss the obvious cultural heritage of the place by having somebody who's not even related to it, sign off on that way. It seems familiar though, because it seems to be just about what they do for all the cultural and ecological values of the forest. They just sort of deem them not to be there, don't they?
That's correct. Yes, I think throughout the years that they've changed clauses in the Forestry Act where it's made it easier for them to not do things proper way. They don't have to get a Gumbaynggirr custodian to do the cultural heritage survey. You can just be an Aboriginal person. So, I mean, that's what I think really that's the fight. We need to change these really restrictive legislations that don't respect Aboriginal culture and cultural heritage.
And how does that affect? I know that there was I spoke to Al Oshlak, and he's been on the show and talked to us about this. And I was there with Al at one point, and he was saying that some of the elders were really quite traumatised by what was being done there, and that when they spoke about their human rights being breached, they were just effectively dismissed, and their sacred fire was put out. And how is that affecting those elders and the community?
Oh, look, I mean, I sound calm now, but I'm absolutely exhausted and emotionally drained because all we have witnessed is, complete disrespect from my elders and seen my elders in tears who have been continually disrespected their whole lives, and this is just a continuation of that. And, to witness the fire brigade come in and extinguish our sacred fire was one of the most shocking and upsetting things I've ever experienced. It's, it's just, we're a very culturally strong, rich people. We're fortunate that we've been able to retain our language and our stories, and and we're building that. We continue to build that cultural strength in our young ones. So we're a proud, strong people, and to be treated like that by authorities, by armed police and the fire brigade and forestry workers is, it's just the height of disrespect. And, all I've ever seen my whole life is my elders, my family continually disrespected, My mum's part of the stolen generation, my family were massacred only 100 years ago just up the road. I mean, it just goes on. And then in 2023, we get, armed forces and the fire brigade extinguishing our sacred fire and disrespecting our culture. I don't know what to say about that, but I think that's what gives me the strength to keep fighting, because I just love to see my elders, get that respect and that acknowledgement, and to have their voices to be heard. Yes.
I'm very sorry that you've been subjected to that, personally, and it's deeply upsetting for many of us who are allies, who support you, and your struggle to So thank you for sharing that with us.
Sean. And I feel that support from the allies from here, Bundjalung country, people from Manam coming to help. And that's what gives us strength, and that's what feels. It makes my elders happy and smile, is that there's so much genuine love and support from so many allies and other mobs, and that fills their heart up with so much. And that makes me happy to see them happy.
So what about the future? I mean, like you've mentioned, there's still a fight on with the Oaks, I think it is, State Forest at the headwaters of the Kalang, and so that's clearly an urgent and immediate future. But how about as well as that, perhaps if I could get you to discuss what the ideal future is the Great Koala National Park, the win that we're looking for, or is there more than that needs to be done? What do you want to see happen here?
We ideally see an end to all native forest logging, full stop. I don't think any native forest should be logged. We're not living in bygone era anymore. There's just no need for it, and it doesn't make any sense. So an end to all native forest logging, and we're so fortunate that we have the Gumbaynggirr. There's the Gumbaynggirr, the koala. This is one of their main rich sources of habitat is here on the Gumbaynggirr country. So we would love to see them protected and for them to thrive. And the Great Koala National Park is an incredible, solution to protecting, our iconic animal. So, the government responded with, saying that they will protect, they'll stop logging 106 koala hubs, but, let's protect all of it. That's just, it's a small start, but it's not good enough. So, we'd love to see a Great Koala National Park, and I'd also love to see cultural heritage programs in these parks. I'd love to see our environment and our Indigenous culture celebrated, and to be a part of, people to come and learn about Aboriginal Gumbaynggirr culture and koalas and koala dreaming and the ecology of the place. Like, it'd be great for tourism, it'd be great for the economy, it'd be the solution to our beautiful animals and to our culture. That's what we're fighting for.
Yeah. Indeed. And so what can people do who are listening in to help make that a reality?
Well, keep campaigning in the way, letters to the Premier, letters to the Minister. You can jump on the Bellingen Activist Network. They're on Facebook and Instagram. That's the group that we work with. It's a historic alliance between mob and allies here on Gumbaynggirr country. And we work together, and it's Gumbaynggirr Elder-led. So if you jump on and just look for Bellingen Activist Network on Facebook or Instagram, you'll be able to follow our progress and our campaign. And, we were just in the Nearest State Forest for 7 weeks, and we had people from everywhere come and spend time with us. So we're a very welcome opening mob. Come and have a cuppa, come and share your expertise, your ideas, the strategy. Yeah, we just really work together. We're really open to building this movement and having people, come on board from all walks of life. I think people, listeners, they might be on other sovereign countries, like one foreign country or what have you, connect with the local mob and, start having those yarns,
Yes, indeed. Well, I've visited the camp there in the forest. I've been there a couple of times now, and I can confirm that it was very welcoming. It was beautifully set up, and comfortable, and felt like warm and welcome there. So it is a good move for people to go and actually see it for themselves. And I guess that's now moved into Oaks State Forest, is it? Sandy? I think we might have lost Sandy there.
Hello.
Oh, here we go. Yep, your signal's dropping out a bit, I think.
We can end it.
Yeah, look, I think we might have covered all of that, and the technology might be the gremlins might be telling us it's time to move on. No, you've done. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom, and you're getting us up to speed with what's going on in that important battle down there for our forests. So, strength to you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day. We'll talk. We'll talk soon. Bye. That was Sandy Greenwood, basically being cut off by the gremlins there, but having said a mouthful, having said plenty to inspire anyone who cares about our beautiful forests and the culture of our First Nations people and the future of our civilization, to join her. At the camp down there. I think it's in Oaks State Forest now. But look at the Bellingen Activist Network and get down there, have a meet up with those wonderful people who are actually doing that great work. All right, I'm going to play another track from Jarrah, and then after that I'm hopeful that I will be able to get back with Dailan Pugh, who will be sharing with us, just talking us through what he thinks about the New South Wales government's plan to stop logging the koala hubs in the proposed Great Koala National Park. I think it'll be, it will be interesting to find out what Dailan has to say about all that. We'll continue to talk forests now with Dailan Pugh, who is the president of the North East Forest Alliance and familiar guest to anyone who's a regular listener to the show. Dailan has responded to the recent decision to protect the koala hubs within the proposed Great Koala National Park, protect them from logging, and he's welcomed that as important but small step towards forwards, though if there is a genuine intent to save koalas from extinction, the government needs to protect all koala hubs across New South Wales and reinstate the requirement for pre-logging surveys to identify and protect all important koala habitat according to the North East Forest Alliance. So that's the media release I have in front of me. So I have Dailan on the line, and I'm sure he will be able to fill us in on all the details. Dailan, thank you for joining Environmental as Anything again today.
No worries for that, Sean.
So the people were quite excited about the this decision, this announcement to protect the koala hubs within the Great Koala National Park. Seems like a no-brainer. What do you think of it?
Look, some people are happy. The trouble is it's the most minimal thing they could do. So these koala hubs were identified in 2017, and basically what they're based upon is records of koalas over time. So where there's a cluster of records of koalas and someone's been back there at some later time and also recorded them, then that's identified as a persistent population and therefore important, or a persistent group of koala records and therefore important and therefore should be protected. But that was 2017. It was based on limited surveys and there's been a lot of surveys since. You know a lot more about koalas than we did back then and where they occur. And it was really only a partial assessment. So it only identifies a small proportion of the important koala habitat. And so it's a real concern that that's all the government intends to do is just protect this small proportion of known areas important to koalas based upon, in effect, old records and not taking into account new records or, even more importantly, to look before they log. So they tend to go on logging important koala habitat that they haven't done these persistent surveys in over time and just log that koala habitat. They just don't care. It's a reckless attitude. And also, outside the Great Koala National Park, or proposed Great Koala National Park, they tend to go on logging koala hubs. You know, these are really important areas. They've identified as being the most important areas known of for protection. And they're going to go on logging them. There's about 11,000 hectares on state forest outside the Great Koala National Park, and they're going to go on logging them. So I think it's a reprehensible decision. We did go and meet with Penny Sharp and put to her and quite a number of other politicians the idea of protecting koala hubs, but also protecting, doing pre-logging surveys for koalas and greater gliders, identifying important habitat for them and protecting that, for implementing the EPA's recommendations back in 2016 that we should be retaining somewhere between 15 and 25 koala feed trees per hectare in modelled high-quality, medium and high-quality habitat rather than the current 5 or 10 feed trees, and also increasing the size of the feed trees from their current small size of 20 centimetres diameter to over 30 centimetres diameter, which is what all the evidence says koalas prefer. So we put a whole suite of options to the government, and all they did was adopt the most minimal one they could, and that's just retaining a limited number of koala hubs and only within the Great Koala National Park.
So people have been asking me, somebody asked me today, what's going on with Penny? I was, they're referring familiarly to our Environment Minister by her first name. But, what do you think? What is it? What's going on there? Why can't they just bite the bullet or at least, grasp the nettle and fix this ongoing weeping sore of destruction in our forest?
They can. They can fix it, and they can do it tomorrow. So all they need to do is to direct the Environmental Protection Authority to change the logging rules. So they're what they call the protocols under the logging rules, and they can be changed by the EPA at their discretion. And so we presented the evidence of all these various changes they could make immediately that are justified within government reports and the EPA's own submissions and their own expert evidence. So where there's substantive evidence of the need for them, we said, what do you think to make these changes? Get the EPA to amend the protocols, you can do it tomorrow. So instead of doing that, Penny's getting them to amend the protocols to only protect these minimal areas of called koala hubs, within the Great Koala National Park. So I don't understand why they're refusing to protect koalas across the landscape, and I don't understand why they're not implementing the meaningful and necessary protection for koalas within the Great Koala National Park. So there's something very wrong going on there. The government is just unwilling, and Penny's unwilling to step up and protect koalas like they promised to, and to protect the Great Koala National Park like they promised to. It's quite disturbing and quite worrying, really, because now they're talking about sometime not until maybe 2025 before they get around to creating the Great Koala National Park. So in the interim, I have no doubt, unless we can force them to, that Penny has no intent of doing any more than what she's just announced.
Good Lord. Oh, that's alarming. Is there there's various court actions in train? Do we hope for, what do we hope for them?
We hope that they will be the circuit breaker we need, because it's quite obvious that neither the state nor federal government have any intention of dealing with forests like we need to. We've got to protect all our public native forests, but at least, in the interim, we've got to protect the habitat of our most threatened and endangered species, like the greater iguana, like the koala, that we know are badly affected by logging, badly affected by the fires, and are in danger of extinction. We've got to take some immediate action, and yet neither government is willing to. So our only hope now is for one of our legal cases to be successful, and that hopefully will get the change we need if they're successful, and there's no guarantee they will be. But there's no other avenue aside from people standing up for our forest, direct action, people making it be known this is not good enough. That's all we have left. There's no doubt there's no political will there on behalf of Penny Sharp or the ALP, both state and federal levels, to do any more.
Yes. Does it not weigh upon them that they have they're in a minority government? Does that not impact on them? Is that not making any change or difference to their behaviour?
Look, we hoped it would. I was extremely hopeful when this government was elected at the state level, and also the federal government as well, that given the Greens have the balance of power in the upper house in New South Wales, that would force the New South Wales government to do something better than what they're doing. So it's just, so I don't understand how they're getting away with not doing that. I'm sure the Greens are trying to hold them to account. And so are a lot of independents. We went and did lobbying of a number of independents, and I was surprised by the amount of enthusiasm and support for ending logging of public native forests. And so we've got a very strong support base there. And including amongst some of the ALP members, it's not been translated into political action. And Penny Sharp has been a great disappointment in her unwillingness to use her power. They were elected to protect the Great Koala National Park, and she's just unwilling to use her power and prestige within the party to get some meaningful changes. Look, it's great getting a few koala hubs protected. They were planning on logging 1,300 hectares this year. or over the next 12 months of koala hubs. They already logged about half a dozen of those. So, Ms. Penny was elected, and we had asked her to please save them, but she wouldn't. So they already had logged quite a few of those, but at least some of those have been spared. But that's not what we need. A lot more than that. That's not nearly enough.
Well, as you say, I suppose it's back to the barricades, and every creative measure that we can to peacefully put pressure upon these the government to begin to act in the community interests. That's the only sort of thing left for the community, isn't it?
Look, it doesn't just barricades are one avenue, and often a very necessary one. But there's lots of others too. It's just speaking out, getting the word out there, doing creative actions, as you mentioned, in the towns and cities, doing some street theatre. There's lots of things people can do to not let the politicians get away with this, and that's what we need. We can hope for the court cases, and we'll probably know within a month or so now whether they're successful or not, because we've got all these, we're waiting on all these judgments, both at the state and federal level on the court cases, and once they're made, then we'll know whether that avenue works or not. If it doesn't, then that's really our last option, besides for the political action that we need.
Well, Dailan, thank you for for clarifying that for us all today, and for all of your ongoing efforts, which I know are exhaustive and exhausting at times. So, thanks again for sharing that with us and getting us up to speed.
No worries. Thanks, Sean.
That was Dailan Pugh, the president of the North East Forest Alliance, sharing with Environmental as Anything the sort of somewhat good news, but really somewhat disappointing outcome where only the small amount of koala hubs which are available in the Great Koala National Park to be protected. The rest of that park is still open for logging, and all the other koala hubs in the state also still open for logging. So logging continuing to destroy our koala habitat and our endangered species across this great state of New South Wales. You're tuned into Environmental as Anything. Going to move on to the story which I promised earlier. I'm going to play to follow up on Dailan's and Sandy Greenwood's contribution regarding our New South Wales forests and our North Coast forests. I'm going to play a perspective on forests from Victoria from Fiona York from Pugh. Okay, hi, I'm in the studios of 3CR in Melbourne, which is a great thrill. I've wanted to be here for a long time. And one of the things that I've wanted to do here was to find somebody who could talk to me about the great progress that's been made here in Victoria about ending native forest logging here in this state. The Andrews government made an announcement back in May that they were going to actually end native forest logging here, and it's been a long, hard fight. So I'm very glad to have Fiona York across the desk from me, who's been working with GECO, the Gumbaynggirr Environment Centre, since 1994, and so has a really good perspective on what's actually happened here in Victoria and in the native forest debate. Thanks for joining Environmental as Anything today, Fiona.
Thanks, Sean. What a great title for a show.
Well, I inherited the title. I can't take credit for it, but it does get a few laughs.
It's a good one.
And GECO, a great title for an organisation. Maybe you could just give us at the outset a bit of an idea of who GECO are, and we'll talk about the end to native forest logging. Yeah, so GECO started in 1993 and has been basically a kind of direct action collective based in East Gippsland since then, and direct action has involved things like blockading, but it's also involved a lot of citizen science, which in recent years has been really effective in saving forests, been doing it for 30 years now, so it's been a long fight
overnight to get this announcement, so we're pretty happy about it.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that announcement, because in New South Wales, of course, we are still struggling to get the ALP, the Minns government in New South Wales, sitting on their hands and kicking their clay feet about actually doing the right thing in our forests. So, what's the decision here in Victoria, and how did you get to that?
I think it's a combination of things. Two of the main factors, I think, in the decision has been, firstly, the bushfires. So in 2019-20, absolutely catastrophic bushfire came through. I know it hit you guys as well. But basically overnight, in one night, the forest from way up in the mountains all the way down to the coast went up in smoke in a very, very intense fire. And that was basically the forest estate that was planned to be logged. And the reason that it was such an intense fire was because so much of it had been logged. Yep. So it was a lot of regen, a lot of really, really terrible, skinny, failed regen with lots and lots of silvertop ash all very close together, very flammable. And that combined with climate change obviously meant that the intensity of the fires was like nothing had seen before. Whereas back in the day, even in the 90s when we were first starting at GECO, we had big, wet rainforest gullies all through the forest that actually formed a protective buffer against these sorts of things. Plus, old growth doesn't burn like regen does. So it really, really impacted on the forest, both ecologically and environmentally, but in terms of a resource. So we thought it was over. We actually thought that there's no way they can keep logging after this event has happened, this catastrophic major event. But of course, as if they would stop. Since when did sense and reason apply to logging? No disaster will stop them. So they basically targeted all of the areas that were unburnt. And there was something like, 30-odd areas. Look, I think you guys call them compartments. We call them coops, that were up on the Errinundra Plateau, which was the only place that wasn't burnt. And there was also so-called salvage logging, which is basically bulldozing what has been burnt. Really, really damaging. And the other thing that was happening was that they were removing dangerous trees, so-called, after the fire, which meant that they were taking out lots of the big old trees, and this was in the national park as well, that had been burnt. So it was massively frustrating because all of this was happening under the guise of safety, but also they were just trying to get that last resource before it went. And so people mobilised again, and there was forest blockades set up, and there was also court cases. And so that was the second kind of major factor that ended up leading to this decision. So, the second major factor was the court cases. So I guess in the beginning of forest campaigning that GECO was doing, we did go to court, but often it was because we were defending ourselves against having been arrested for stopping the forest. So we would run campaigns where we were basically trying to defend ourselves. So we did have a couple of successes with that. In around 98 or something, Bob Brown was arrested, and his case ended up getting us all off because they found the logging was illegal. There was another one at Dingo Creek that we were using the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act to say the logging was illegal. But it wasn't until kind of maybe about 10 years ago that we started to actually sue the government instead of the other way around. And it was never GECO, because GECO doesn't exist legally, but it was other environment groups. So there was a couple in the Central Highlands, there was the Flora and Fauna Collective, there was Environment East Gippsland, and King Lake Friends of the Forest, Leadbetter's Possum people, I can't remember their names now, but all of them basically sued the government for failing to fulfil their environmental obligations under various pieces of legislation. So that's the Victorian government? The Victorian government, yeah. So some of it was, actually Vic Forest, which is a government-owned entity which runs the logging. So as a result of that, it was often based on endangered species protections. So it might be a particular species. So there was the owl case. There was the case around greater gliders and yellow-bellied gliders. And there was also around big tree protection at some time as well. So each time our lawyers would kind of comb through the legislation and try to work out the best way to sue them, and then we would need an environment group to mount that case. And so to have the environment group be considered, you had to show that you had a connection, that you had good standing. Exactly. And so they ended up being really, really successful cases.
Yeah, right.
There's been about 6 of them, I think 5 or 6 of them, and one of them still hasn't had a decision made, and that's the old growth one, which is around the definition of old growth. That's been, I think, about 3 or 4 years waiting for a decision, maybe even longer. But those other ones actually resulted in costs being awarded against Vic Forest that were in the millions.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, here's this government-owned logging agency that is logging against the community's wishes, no economic basis, and is making a massive loss because they keep getting sued by greenies. So it just wasn't viable anymore.
Right.
So with all of that going on, that's been going on for 10 years, that Vic Forest was making huge, huge losses through the court cases, and it was all based on citizen science. So GECO volunteers would be out in the bush. They'd be trying to find crayfish in gullies in the middle of the night. They'd be spotlighting for greater gliders. They'd be recording it with GPSs and maps and all of that stuff, using remote sensing cameras to try and find long-footed potoroos, measuring trees, all of this constantly. And that data would then go into the court cases, and the court cases would have barristers and lawyers, and Vic Forest would just be smashed on these points of law. And yeah, over a number of years and a number of really big high-profile losses, it just became like bad for them in the media, and really bad for their bottom line.
Right.
So it just wasn't viable. And then all of a sudden, these fires come through. They were bound by the wood pulp agreement, which is a piece of legislation that says they must provide a certain amount of wood for wood chipping. And that was the real problem. But the lawyers again had a look at it and went, hey, you can actually get out of this contract.
Force majeure.
That's right, force majeure. So all of a sudden there was an out. And only just yesterday they announced that they're on the way to disbanding or deregistering Vic Forests, which is an incredible outcome.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah. So I don't think there was one silver bullet. I think it's been a long process, and I really don't think it would have happened without the disaster that was the fires. But all of those court cases and all of that citizen science, plus the pressure. So media has been really, really important to draw attention to the issue and building that kind of community awareness. I guess GECO has been a very small kind of environment group, very, very far away from everywhere, but we were able to kind of pass on our knowledge and skills to other small environment groups, and they wanted to protect their backyards. And so the forest that was important to people in little tiny places all over Victoria, in the Central Highlands, in the Strathbogies, in Central Gippsland and West Gippsland, they all became kind of, they saw what could happen with citizen science and some media and some community pressure. And they started doing stuff, and they started going, hang on a minute, using the same tools and tactics. So I think it was a really big movement-wide thing, and, 40 years in the making, really. I mean, it's funny to reflect when we were doing the regional forest agreements. East Gippsland was the first one to be signed. And I remember NEFA working really, really hard to get good outcomes, and we were kind of looking to you guys. I think you went through a 3-year process.
Yep.
And we were like, wow, they're getting outcomes with this process that we are never going to get because we just got ours signed and we were completely screwed from that moment on, where it was a really different process for you guys. So, yeah.
It was a big fight, but at the end of the day, the RFAs have been absolutely disastrous, even with all of those what seemed like victories on the day. So, and the RFAs have excluded us from, the excluded forestry from all of the Federal Environment Protection, Biodiversity Conservation Act, etc. And so that's it's been utterly disastrous. So, but it strikes me, there are lots of similarities. It sounds like, like citizen science,
direct action in the forest, court action. These are things that we're all doing, or as best we can. Sounds like Vic Forests have got a bit of a different setup, perhaps, than New South Wales Forest Corps, which are seems to be basically exempt from the law. It seems like you actually can gain standing to take them on endangered species issues here in Victoria. So that might be a difference that can be highlighted. But what I think. One of the things I wonder about is what about the politics of dealing with the ALP? Has there been some breakthroughs there? Have there been people within the Victorian ALP or within the union movement or anywhere that you've been able to actually access to talk to get on side, who's seen the sense of the argument, aside from all of those other compelling reasons?
Yeah, I think the unions are really important, and working with them has been really an important strategy, bringing that kind of worker perspective. I guess one of the things that we always found really frustrating was that the export wood chipping industry was also destroying local jobs. There was nothing in it for anyone. We were talking about resource that was getting exported overseas for really poor outcomes for workers as well as the environment. But to get the CFMEU to actually say that was really, really hard, even though on the ground they may be agreeing, or people in the mills may be agreeing. Politically, they wouldn't do it. And I think that has been a real problem, and there's been a couple of people high up in that union that have just been bloody minded about it for years, even though they know damn well it hasn't been great for them either. But yeah, the government bought one of the mills to keep them happy, bought the Hayfield mill. And you know, they definitely were trying to do, and they packages constantly for the workers. So I think all of that stuff is really important, but there's other workers that are impacted too, not just people in the logging industry. So if you think about all of the caring industries that there are, all of the environmental restoration industries, they're all unions as well. So I think working with unions broadly is a really important thing, and just remembering that all of workers need to have solidarity, and we need to be looking at the fact that regional communities are getting screwed by multinational corporations. We've all got this in common, and how do we work together? So I think building solidarity and connections with the union movement is really, really important. But I don't know if that was a factor necessarily in this decision, although I'd love to say that it was. But I think in terms of long-term strategies, absolutely, yeah.
And so at the end of the day, did it come as a surprise when Dan Andrews said, I don't even know the name of the minister, excuse my ignorance, but they announced, okay, it's over. We
were shocked, yeah. Yeah, we were really shocked. Yeah. And in disbelief, and it was actually really bittersweet because I guess for a lot of us, we've seen so much loss. And it's loss of people and loss of forest, and it was. I mean, I cried all the way home when I heard. Everybody was really emotional, and I guess we're still a bit in shock, but we're also aware that nothing is as it seems, and we're now really conscious of how they're going to keep doing business as usual under a different guise of fire management or some other type of thing. So we're definitely vigilant because we've seen it happen so many times before. I mean, the department used to be called the DCNR, Department of Constant Name Review. And so we want to make sure that Vic Forest isn't disbanded and replaced with something equally as dodgy.
Well, it would be hard to find something equally as dodgy, wouldn't it? But you know, then again, they're very good at coming up with dodgy schemes. So
you never know.
You never know. All right. Well, look, that's amazing and inspiring, and obviously we'll want to delve into some of the details of that as as up north and try to replicate your success.
Well, I should also mention we also spoke to WA because they had their announcement under a Labor government too before we did. So learning from what happened in WA and now Victoria, and then keeping the pressure on for New South Wales and Tassie, and that, like you say, why the hell is logging exempt from the federal environment laws? What is going on there? The regional forest agreements have been a disaster for the entire country, and we need to address them collectively as an entire country that cares about forests and protecting forests as part of a climate response. So, yeah, I think there's still heaps that we need to be doing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, there's so much work to be done, but, we've got to take our victories where we find them, don't we?
Yeah.
Look, so speaking of celebrating our victories, GECO's been at it for 30 years this year. That's a huge anniversary for GECO, and it's a huge anniversary for the forest movement in general. I've been involved since way back then, and I can remember GECO being a mainstay of the movement while I was in the southeast forests and when I've been in the northeast forest. So tell us a bit more. Tell us a bit more about GECO and what's planned for these celebrations. It's two big momentous events: the end of native forest logging and 30 years of GECO.
Yeah, well, we didn't think they'd coincide. So the fact that they've coincided is just, oh my God, stars have aligned. We're going to have a big party. That's our plans at the moment. We're in the process of organising a big celebration in December, the 1st to the 3rd of December, and we want everyone that's ever been to GECO to come down or up, and that's literally thousands of people, which I don't think is going to happen, but it will be nice to see a few hundred. So we're going to have some bands. We're going to obviously see the forest, just celebrate and also commemorate and remember our comrades that we've lost as well. There's been lots of people that have died over the time as well, so we're definitely going to be taking our hats off to them. So far we've counted 28 people. Wow. So that's a really important part of the memory as well. So the wins and the losses, and so we're going to have a party. Everyone's invited. Come on down.
Yep. And so it'll all on the GECO website, isn't it? geco.org.au.
Yeah.
And people can book themselves in and come down. And even if they weren't there, I imagine that they'll still get the welcome mat rolled out.
Yeah. Come on down. Bring your kids. Bring whoever you like. Yeah. Come on down. It's going to be camping. There's a property behind. I shouldn't say where it is because the police have been sniffing around. There's a property that we'll be going on, and that will be where the event is held. There's nice camping at the campground. There's a beautiful river that runs through the town. You can go up to the Errinundra Plateau and see the beautiful old growth up there. So, yeah, it'll be good. Yeah,
look, I'm actually really keen. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to be there for that because it's
awesome.
Sounds like a really great weekend out and a great opportunity to see some forests that I've long wanted to see and to meet up with a bunch of my old mates who were... I was never involved in the Victorian campaigns, but I was just across the border in New South Wales while it was all going on, doing that up there. So there are a lot of the same people crossed over from one to the other. It'll be good to get back together with all of them. Yeah,
it was historically a big connection between the southeast New South Wales and because we had the common enemy of the export wood chipping mill, and that whole concept of bioregions was big back in the day. So the arbitrary border of the states didn't really matter. We were talking about the same forest and talking about the same problem. So absolutely, the southeast forest people were awesome.
Well, thanks, Fiona. Thanks for your time today. I know you're flat out busy recording all of the details from this. Maybe we'll be able to get some more interviews from you that we can keep playing and keep people up to speed with the story of GECO as those months approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Environmental As Anything podcast. I'll be bringing them to you as regularly as I can. If you'd like to tune into more of this kind of material, there's plenty of episodes available. You can subscribe to our podcast, and while you're there, you might as well rate it and help spread the word by sharing it on social media if you can. We're on social media, of course, on Facebook particularly. You can find us anywhere you look for Environmental As Anything. And if you're really keen to see the show carry on, please do go and support us on Patreon. Again, you can find us by just searching Environmental As Anything Patreon. Thank you for your support. Be gentle with yourselves, be kind to each other, and remember, we are all in this together.